So we identified that from stopping benefits to sickness benefits and universal credit to foreign nationals, we could save around £7 billion. That was based on the foreign nationals who have, for instance, limited leave and indefinite leave to remain. So as we said before, not assuming that we'll get some brilliant renegotiation with the European Union. And if I recall from memories, a while ago I was doing those numbers, I think it was around 300,000 individual households we were talking about.
There's a growing consensus across the main parties that the welfare system needs reform. We're told the bill is spiralling, that it's unsustainable, that something has to change. Recent political history tells a slightly different story. Straightforward cuts are neither palatable nor easy to deliver. Take the personal independence payment. It isn't means tested. You can claim it whether you're in work or not. It's there to help people with disabilities meet the extra costs of everyday life. The last government tried to tighten who qualified. More than 100 Labour MPs signalled they'd vote against it, and Keir Starmer abandoned the central change days before the vote. So politicians reach instead for the language we've heard many times before of carrot and stick. They talk about a life of purpose, about helping people into work, about removing the barriers that keep them on benefits. What claimants tend to hear is the other word, sanctions. Nobody seriously argues that people should be better off on benefits than in work. Where that happens, the incentives are wrong and they need fixing. But saying the system needs reform isn't the same as saying reform means cutting the bill, and the two keep getting treated as though they are. Reform UK, the political party, says it would take £50 billion off welfare spending and replace PIP altogether if it got into government. Labour calls that fantasy economics. The Conservatives call it half-baked, and another attempt to change the subject from the £5 million given to Nigel Farage. There's also the real political danger for reform that their proposal would hit many of their supporters hardest. Though the Conservatives are hardly well-placed to lecture anyone here. Their last manifesto promised £12 billion a year in savings. They got nowhere near it in office, and the overall welfare bill went up between 2010 and 2024, whatever the rhetoric about getting tough. Now Andy Burnham is under pressure over a different part of the problem. The growing number of young people out of education, out of work and out of training claiming benefits, many of them reporting mental health problems. Which raises the question nobody in this debate seems to start with. Not how much money can we take away, but what does this person actually need? In a moment we'll hear from the Good Growth Foundation, a think tank looking at a more holistic approach. Their idea is that some claimants might trade part of their financial support for practical help with work or training or health, depending on what's actually standing in their way. It wouldn't slash the bill overnight, but at the moment we have a system that hands people money without ever really asking what would help them need less of it. And if you never ask the question, you'll never find out how many of them would have settled for something else instead. This is The Times at 1 on Times Radio with me, Jo Coburn. So half of disability benefit claimants would be prepared to sacrifice £1,000 a year in exchange for services such as therapy and healthy meals. That's according to research by economic think tank the Good Growth Foundation. It could represent, as I said, a different approach the government could take instead of just slashing the welfare bill. But will it work? Louisa Dollymore is the Director of Strategy at the Good Growth Foundation. Welcome to The Times at 1. Louisa, just explain exactly how this change or proposal would work.
Thank you very much for having me, Jo. Yes, absolutely. I mean, you summarised it quite well just there. Essentially, what we're proposing is that people who are receiving PIP at the moment be given a choice. Would you like to keep all of your cash benefit, or would you like to swap some of it for services that you might feel you need? So we asked about services ranging from things like therapy, skills and training, job coaching, even things like physiotherapy and healthy meals. And we found that a significant number of people, actually 50%, would give up £1,000 a year of their cash benefit in exchange for one of these services. And the reality is, they probably already want them, but they might be able to, they might be struggling to access them, or the government can probably get them at better cost than an individual might be able to go out and get them themselves.
Now, I said in the introduction, Louisa, that it wouldn't exactly transform or lower the bill radically overnight. But do you have any idea quantitatively what it could do to the welfare bill?
Well, I think the crucial thing to kind of remember is that a system that works is probably cheaper than one that doesn't, and we certainly have one that doesn't at the moment. The crucial thing about our proposal is that we are proposing claimants swap their cash for benefits like services. And what that means is this could all be done within the current envelope. There may be long-term savings, and certainly it's fair to say that if you are empowering people to kind of live their fullest life, and for some people that will mean going back to work, I think there will be savings in the long run.
Right. I mean, in terms of the approach overall, I mean, it sounds very sensible. Is it practical in terms of a system that is either you can or you can't work? You're talking about something much more nuanced and much more bespoke. Would that cost more money up front?
It certainly wouldn't cost more money up front, because if someone, for example, is willing to swap, say, £50 a week of their cash benefit, then you can shape the services that they receive according to how much they're willing to swap. You know, if they five healthy meals a week is going to be cheaper than 15 healthy meals a week. In terms of how kind of radical this is and how much it is reform, I would say it is, because right now we kind of conceive of the welfare system as just a safety net, and we focus very much on cash provision. But in reality, if we really want to focus on getting people back to kind of the best lives that they can possibly live, then you have to think much, much more widely. That's where you have to think about skills and job coaching, but you also have to think about whether they are fit and healthy and whether you could do small tweaks that would enable them to be more so. So it's basically about having that kind of holistic approach and really reforming the way we think about welfare, so that money into the welfare system isn't just money into a black hole, but it's actually investing in getting people to where they could be rather than just maintaining them where they are right now.
And just briefly, Louisa, have you got the ear of government on this?
I think that, you know, Andy Burnham has said previously he is very keen to look at this issue. I'm sure it's absolutely top of his in tray. And that is precisely why we need some big, ambitious ideas on this topic. And that's why we have put this forward today.
Louisa Dollymore, the Director of Strategy at the Good Growth Foundation. Thanks for talking to us. Well, let's stick with the welfare system and the best approach to gripping the benefits bill and gripping for claimants themselves. Reform UK says it would ban more than 1 million foreigners living in Britain from claiming almost all benefits. They claim it would save £50 billion from cutting welfare. European Union citizens with settled status would be included. Reform's Danny Kruger was asked on Times Radio Breakfast what would happen to the children of EU nationals who are struggling financially.
Children are dependent on their parents. We ascribe benefits to households, and families that are unable to support themselves should not be here. Obviously, there are hardship grants.
But if they are here, what happens to them?
They shouldn't be here.
But if they are here,
they will not be entitled to benefits, and they will have to go. Listen, the extreme example you're giving, I think you're suggesting that children are destitute, their parents are not earning. Obviously, social services would step in and remove those children from their parents if they're not able to put food on the table.
Danny Kruger there. Well, the Conservatives would also deny benefits to foreign nationals, but would exclude EU citizens who have settled status. Let's talk about that with Helen Whately, Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Welcome to the Times at One, Helen. Just listening to Danny Kruger and your proposals, is there a competition going on here with reform on who sounds tougher when it comes to cutting benefits for foreign nationals?
Not at all. I mean, you all know, Jo, and your listeners will know that I've been talking about the importance of making welfare savings for many months now, and set out some of our plans, including the plan for us to make a saving of £23 billion back at our party conference last year. But I've taken a really thoughtful approach to how we do this, and I don't want to put out there a big number that I don't believe can be achieved. We've got to have a plan for how we do it. So yes, part of our plan does include stopping giving benefits to foreign nationals, but as you just said, not those who have EU settled status, because that requires a reopening of Brexit and a renegotiation of the deal with the European Union. Massive uncertainty there, and I don't think a good way to plan to make substantial savings from the welfare system, which we know we need to get on and do urgently.
Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about not wanting to throw out a big number, making pledges that are perhaps unachievable, because, of course, the benefits bill went up under successive Conservative governments. The IFS says between 2019 and 24, an extra 1.4 million working-age adults began claiming disability or sickness-related benefits, and that drove an estimated £10 billion plus per year, an increase in disability spending heading into the 2024 election. Do you accept now it just can't be done?
Not at all. In fact, if you look back at our track record in government, so between 2010 and the pandemic, we brought the welfare bill down. We got hundreds of thousands of people off welfare and into work. You add the numbers, the number actually came down. What we saw then coming through the pandemic has been a rise in the claims for benefits, particularly a rise in people claiming for mental health. So that was right at the back end of our time in government. So absolutely, we know, and we have a track record from our time in government of bringing the bill down. And that's why a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last year has been particularly focusing on this rise in claimants for mental health, and why I announced that we would stop giving sickness benefits for people with milder mental health conditions and neurodiversity like ADHD, and instead focus on providing people with support to work. It's interesting to see that in Reform's announcement today, and also in the conversation you were just having with Louise of the Good Growth Foundation, you're talking about actually very much doing that, of moving away from cash benefits and providing people with support, because actually for many that's a better answer.
But 2019 to 2024 isn't just the back end. That was quite a sizable time when the Tories were in government. But what I'm trying to get to is, are you admitting now, because of experience, that trying to say you're going to slash the welfare bill by £23 billion when institutes like the IFS said that that just wasn't going to be possible leading into the election? Would it be better to say we could perhaps slow the rise, but we can't take that much money out of the welfare bill quickly?
I don't think just slowing the rise is good enough, because of the rate at which we've seen the rise in benefits going up. And actually what we're seeing is the claims for benefits going up much, much faster than anyone can possibly suggest the levels of disability or sickness are going up in the UK. So something is going very wrong, where we haven't got a huge increase in sickness and disability, but we've got this very rapid rise in sickness and disability benefits.
Okay.
That has to be turned around, both for the sake of the country's finances, we simply can't afford this, and also because it's much better for people to be in work and supported to work than written off and on benefits.
I'm trying to get the gap between the sort of promise, the pledge, and perhaps the ambition in your case, and what is actually realistic in terms of achieving it. I mean, what number of foreign nationals are you talking about who are accessing benefits, and what's the cost of them to the Exchequer?
So we identified that from stopping benefits to sickness benefits and universal credit to foreign nationals, we could save around £7 billion. That was based on the foreign nationals who have, for instance, limited leave and indefinite leave to remain. So as we said before, not assuming that we'll get some brilliant renegotiation with the European Union. And if I recall from memories, a while ago I was doing those numbers, I think it was around 300,000 individual households we were talking about. So that
So 300,000 households are claiming £7 billion worth of benefits.
That's my recollection. As I'm saying, I'm doing this from without looking at the numbers in front of me, but that's what I recall when we did the work on that bit of policy.
Right, and when was that? I mean, is that weeks ago, months ago?
We announced that back at our party conference in October.
Right. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are. That sounds like an awful lot of money that you say you're going to be able to save, and the sorts of people who may be affected. Who would they be again?
So we have set out that would be foreign nationals, so people who have, for instance, indefinite leave to remain and limited leave to remain. So those are foreign nationals in the country who, at the moment, do have a right to claim benefits, but as I said, are clearly, because they're foreign nationals, are not British citizens. And our view on this is that our benefit system should be there as a safety net for British people, particularly for British people who are contributing and expecting that the welfare system, in the event that something should happen to them, would be there to help them and keep them out of serious poverty. And so that is what our welfare system should be there for. If you're a foreign national here in this country, you should be here. If you're here legally, you should be contributing. If you're here illegally, clearly you should not be here at all.
Would you accept if you're here illegally? Yes, that's one thing. If you are here legally and you're working, which is probably the majority of people who have migrated to the country with limited leave to remain, you're not going to make those savings, are you?
Sorry, if you're here legally and you're working, well, you need to make if you're here legally and you're working, you need to be not dependent on the British state. So, for instance, you need to look at whether you can do more hours and how you can pay your own way, because that's what we're saying. If you're here legally and you're contributing, you need to be contributing to our economy, not drawing on our benefit system.
Right. Well, OK, that aside, how else do you get to your £23 billion of savings?
So there's a substantial chunk of savings from our saying that we won't continue to give benefits to people, sickness benefits to people on when their claim is for the milder end of mental health conditions and neurodiversity. Instead, the better model is to offer people support to work, particularly because a large number of people who are receiving personal independence payment, PIP, for these reasons, although you can work when you've got PIP, many people worry that if they do work, they will lose their PIP. And so that is actually really, really unhelpful, and means that the benefit system is working against what may be the right person for somebody in that scenario. We're saying, let's stop having that essential trap preventing people from getting into work, and let's shift away from that cash model to supporting people in that situation to work. And we've worked with the Centre for Social Justice for this and expect there to be between £7 and £9 billion worth of savings from that. Now, that's clearly a really substantial amount of money to save. I don't deny that. But that's partly because this is a very rapidly growing area for people to be claiming sickness benefits.
Right. I mean, my maths puts that at £16 billion worth of savings that you're hoping. So you just said 7 to 9. So where's the rest coming from? If we let's take the more generous number, £9 billion worth of savings, that still leaves you with £7 billion to find.
Yes, very good. We've already said that we will save around £1 billion. Potentially there could be more from reforms to what's called the household benefits cap. So this is a cap that was introduced under the Conservative government to limit the total amount of benefits that a household would receive, so that you wouldn't get very large amounts of benefits compared to, for instance, the amount that a family, a household where the adults are working. And what we've seen actually is significant numbers of families and households now being exempt from that cap, even if somebody is just working a little bit in that household. So what we're saying is that really, if somebody can be working in that household, you shouldn't continue to be you shouldn't be able to be exempt. And we estimate that will save us around £1 billion. So we've worked this through. As I was setting this out, and I realise it's quite complicated. To give you a sense of how much we've worked through, thought hard about these figures and how we will make the savings.
I accept that there has been some work, as you've been trying to explain the figures and the breakdown, but there is still some way to go. Do you like Louisa Dollimore's suggestions, the sort of trading system, just briefly?
Well, I was listening to her about that. My instinct is that you probably need to be more specific about the way the future system should work, rather than just saying a pick and choose system in that way. But what I do welcome is that now there is a significant conversation going on about the way that our system isn't working. I feel that very much the government has been completely in denial about the fact that you should do welfare quite differently from the way it's working at the moment. And has not been saying that they're going to be prepared to make any savings, when actually you really, really do need to start making savings from welfare.
Helen Whately, thank you very much. Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions.